Hey, and welcome back to The Pit Lane, a Formula One podcast where we talk about everything Formula One. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Canadian Grand Prix. I am your host, Jordan Wynn, and alongside me is your co-host, Alden Kaywell. How are you doing this week, Alden?
I'm doing great, Jordan. It's been a while since we were able to see each other last, but it's good to be back in front of the mic.
Yeah, we missed a few. We didn't miss the races, but life things got in the way of us getting together and doing some podcasting. But so we'll briefly touch on Imola and Monaco.
That's right.
Before we talk about the Canadian Grand Prix, but as we always do, let's start with some news.
Absolutely, we got quite a bit of news.
Driver market. Let's get updated on that since there's been a lot of, I don't even think really moving parts, just a lot of parts being signed.
Yeah,
or staying
parts.
put.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like. So as most of you, or I guess some of you know, driver market for 2025 at the beginning of the year was kind of wide open, minus a few players. So what we have now is Perez signed a 2-year deal to stay at Red Bull. Do you think it's a 1+1 or?
I thought I heard during the commentary for this weekend's Canada, either some of the people on Sky F1 making it sound like it was a 1+1. I know it
on a team option or a driver option.
They said many options.
Oh,
so maybe both people have options. It has to be a mutual option. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's not as clear cut of a 2-year hard deal as
it initially sounded like.
Yeah.
Okay. But good for Perez, at least. Gets him to at least the 2026 regs.
Absolutely.
Potentially. Yeah, and gets him through next year.
Yep. He's in the fastest car for another year.
That's right. Other news, Ocon will be leaving Alpine at the end of the season. Doesn't feel like a big surprise there, especially after what happened at Monaco, which we'll get into briefly, and his relationship with Pierre Gasly.
Right. There was like you said, we'll get into it a little bit later, but there was a crash in Monaco between Ocon and Gasly. I think for most viewers, it was pretty clearly an Ocon fault, but the team and Ocon mutually agreed to part ways at the end of his contract. So he's not being fired. It's not like the team is getting rid of him. It's not like he's quitting. They just agreed that come the end of the contract, they'll just move. Both of them will move forward in different directions.
Yep. And Yuki Tsunoda, he has a 1-year extension on his VCARB or RB deal, or the junior team, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
So he's sticking with his current team for at least 1 more year.
Yeah, and that was announced basically, like an hour before qualifying for the weekend?
Yeah, it was after the Pride. Yeah, it was after some of the sessions.
So apparently he signed a new deal. He'll be at the former Minardi, former Toro Rosso, former AlphaTauri, former whatever the heck they are, team, VCARB, RB, whatever. He'll be there for 1 more year. So like you said, a lot of drivers staying put, a lot of drivers or a lot of teams thinking they've already got a good driver lineup. Who knows if some of these teams just feel like there aren't better options out there, or they legitimately feel like the drivers they have are the best options. Some of these drivers are getting paid a lot of money to stay at the same team. So for them, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you're Checo, where else would you want to go? You don't want to go anywhere else. You want to stay at Red Bull. Max wants to keep you there apparently. So it's good for him. Yuki, there isn't really a better option for him. With Checo re-signing at Red Bull, he's kind of got to stay put. Ocon leaving, we'll kind of speculate on where he goes to next. Maybe Haas. It kind of sounds like there's maybe some rumors about him going to Haas.
Right.
I don't really know if there's another option. I mean, is he still part of the Mercedes family? Could he end up at Williams?
Isn't his agent like Total Wolff? Isn't that the rub? Is that?
Yeah.
So he's technically not a Mercedes driver, but he's like Total Wolff is essentially like his agent, or something to that effect.
So he's got established relationships, obviously, with the Williams team, both because Mercedes supplies them engines, but because of James Vowles is the team principal. He's got a former Mercedes team strategy boss. So, maybe Ocon goes to Williams, maybe Ocon goes to Haas. I think those are his two options. It seems pretty unlikely that he'll end up at Sauber/Audi. But maybe. I suppose if Sainz ends up taking the spot at Williams, then maybe.
It sounded like Ocon might be the next choice at Audi with Hulk.
Okay.
But let's get into let's go through the driver market while we're at it, so we can kind of get caught up.
We'll recap.
So it's not so confusing. So Red Bull for next year. This is just for next year.
Yeah.
Max and Checo.
Current. This is what it is current as of June 12th.
Yes.
Okay.
Max and Checo for 2025 at Red Bull Racing. McLaren, Piastri, and Norris still locked in. Ferrari is Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes is George and unknown technically right now.
Okay.
Kimi Antonelli seems to be the guy they're looking for. He's an F2 right now. He's a Mercedes junior driver.
Okay.
Toto rates him very highly. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso's locked in. And Lance Stroll is Lawrence Stroll's son, so presumably he's sticking around another year at least. Williams, Alex Albon signed his contract.
That's right. He's got a 2-year deal.
Yes, with options or something like that too. I think driver options. It's kind of similar to what we're talking off air about.
Okay.
And unknown for that second seat, Sauber is Hulk slash unknown as well. That will be Audi in 2026. VCarb is Yuki and unknown. That's really between Ricardo and Lawson right now, what it seems like.
Sure.
Haas is 2 open seats right now. They're talking about Ollie Behrman, the guy who substituted for Sainz in the Ferrari earlier this season.
Oh, yeah. That Jetta.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Alpine, 2 unknowns.
2 unknowns.
2 open seats technically, but I'm willing to bet they keep Gasly because they probably need one.
They probably keep Gasly with Ocon leaving.
Yep.
Each of those 2 drivers were the roadblock for either of the other to stay there.
Right. And this is their second year together there, right?
This is their second year together.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But I'm sure we'll get more news coming out.
And going back through these, so Max was already locked in. Checo re-signed.
Yes.
Piastri and Norris were both locked in for next year.
Yes.
Charles was already locked in at Ferrari. Lewis was a new signing. And that's what triggered all this musical chair stuff.
And this was off season before the year started.
That's right. That was like a week before Bahrain started.
Yeah.
Okay. George was already signed up for Mercedes. And now with the departure of Lewis, there's the open seat.
Yes.
Okay. At Aston Martin, both of those drivers were out of contract at the end of this season. Alonso re-signed.
Yes.
Stroll sort of has like this rolling deal. So long as Lawrence is in control, he stays there.
Essentially. Unless Lance doesn't want it.
Right. But they do make an official announcement once he does resign. We just haven't seen one yet.
Right.
Cool. Williams, they were out of both drivers. Albon re-signed during the middle of the season. Probably, what was that, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago? It was while we were off air.
Yeah, it might have been right before Imola.
Okay.
I think.
Sauber, that Hulk announcement was made.
That was before.
That was like a month and a half ago.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
That was a while ago. So he moved from Haas to.
And that's a multi-year deal.
That's a multi-year.
For Audi.
He got 3 years or something, or 2 plus 1.
I think it's 2 plus 1 because Audi will take control. German team, German driver.
Great for Hulk. Love him. All right. So Sauber's then, both of their drivers that are currently there are out of contract. Neither one of them are anywhere.
Which is Bottas and Zhou. I saw a rumor that Zhou's, whoever, agents, whatever, were offering like $35-40 million for that seat.
Where?
To give to the team.
At Audi or at somewhere else?
At Sauber.
Oh,
Sauber/Audi. Yeah, to keep his seat. Well, he's Chinese.
So a paid driver.
Right.
Okay.
So
who's
Chinese
his sponsor?
backing. All those Chinese companies.
Well,
Right. I don't know what their names are.
It's not Kick or Steak or anything. It's okay.
But yeah,
interesting.
I saw that rumor.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, that might be hard to turn down in a cost cap era too. It's a lot of money.
Well, what are they going to use the money on?
I don't know.
Okay,
but less money than Audi would have to spend.
Oh, that's a good point. So it's a subsidy for their team. Okay,
right.
And just pin your hopes on Hulk.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. Okay, so VCarb or RB, whatever they call themselves, they were both drivers were out of contract at the end of the season.
Yes.
Yuki has re-signed. Daniel, unknown at the moment.
Yes.
Okay.
And Lawson's their reserve driver who came in last year for Ricardo for like 4 or 5 races.
Yeah. He was great.
Yes.
All right. Well, we want to see him.
Yes, we do.
Okay. Maybe we don't know how we feel about if it's at the expense of Daniel, though.
Right. Yeah. Essentially, we like Daniel.
But I like Lawson a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be time to.
I think so.
Move over.
At least it's a slow,
he's getting his chances at least.
Everyone's sort of like getting used to the idea that Daniel might not be there.
Right. It's not like a boom cutout.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I seem we're on the same page here. Okay.
Yep.
And then Haas, like we talked about, Hulk left, Magnussen's up at the end of the year. Kind of seems like Magnussen's not coming back.
Right.
No one has said he's coming back.
I have heard nothing about K-Mag.
Okay. He might. Yeah.
And Gunther Steiner's gone, right? So that's his big,
That's a good point.
Their current.
Right. Io Komatsu.
Yeah, doesn't have a relationship with him,
Right.
but that's half the reason he came back was Gunther Steiner.
Okay. And then Alpine, 2 unknowns. So actually, at the beginning of all this, there was quite a lot of, there was a lot of open seats. It was really only McLaren that had a full lineup.
Yeah. And there was only 2 moves currently.
Right. Lewis moving, Hulk
And
moving.
Hulk moving. That's it.
And
Everybody else
is re-signing.
Yes. So we've had 1, presumably 2, 3, 4, 5 re-signings.
That's impressive. Okay. And there could be some new blood in the sport as well, right? Like if Bierman comes in, yes, he raced the 1 race.
Yeah.
If Antonelli comes in, he's never been in before. We got an empty seat at Haas that could go to a young driver. We got 2 seats at Alpine. Potentially.
1 could go to their reserve, Jack Doohan.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then Sauber could eventually bring in someone else as well,
Right.
who we haven't seen race before.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of news. That's a lot of driver news, rather.
That's what happens when we miss a couple of weeks.
It is.
I mean, it's been probably about a month, right? Sorry about the background noise here. We got motorcycles outside.
Someone thinks they're having fun.
Yeah. We're revving it up.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on all these because I think there's still going to be some changes, or maybe not changes, but there's going to be more news here, obviously, in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and Barcelona's coming up. Could be a time to hear about Carlos Sainz news.
Oh, that would be a smart play,
right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future here.
All right, let's like in
2
today's
weeks.
Wednesday,
Week and a half.
right?
Yeah.
A media day could be on Thursday in Barcelona, so 8 days.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
We'll keep you updated on that. Hopefully, we don't get too far behind next time. There's a lot of movement, or not, but
yeah. Watch now that we're now that we've sorted out what we've sorted out.
Nobody's going to change anybody until the end of the season, and then
exactly it'll be like August break.
Speaking of which, while we were away, my comments here. Imola, we'll briefly touch on that. Max won the race.
Yes, he did.
It wasn't comfortable by any means. Lando was hard charging toward the end. He got within a second in the last lap of the race. If he had a few more laps, he may have gotten there, but Max also kind of was able to save his tires toward the end of the race and use them when he needed to.
Yeah, I was able to only watch like a couple, like 2 or 1 of the practice sessions and the qualifying session. I was out of town, but I didn't finish the race. I never finished the race. I only watched like the first 20 laps of the race. So when I fell asleep on the couch while watching that race live, I saw that Max had a comfortable lead. It was, multiple seconds, but from what I saw on sort of the standings at the end of the day, is that Lando had made up some ground on the last stint and was charging. But
yeah, if my memory serves, which we know sometimes it doesn't. Lando, I believe he pitted. He went on a longer stint on his first stint, and that way he was able to have better tires toward the end of the race, and I think he was able to crawl back a lot of time, but just couldn't get to Max at the end, essentially. And there was no safety cars.
Which is strange for that circuit.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, it was just kind of, it was a decent race, but nothing.
Yeah, I seem to recall there not being a lot of action in the first 20 so laps of the race this year.
Yeah, I think there was some contact, in the first few corners.
Okay.
A little bit, but nothing that was.
Do we think that they're going to bring Imola back next year? Because I think the circuit's only got 1 more year left.
I don't know. I like the track. I like the circuit.
Do you like the history of the circuit?
I do. I just think these cars have kind of outgrown it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they shrunk up the DRS zone
this
last year didn't make sense because it's already really hard to pass there. And then shrinking that zone up made it more difficult. So I don't know what they'll do. We got new regs in 2026 too with we even talk about that.
We should talk about that. Maybe let's get to that after we touch on Imola and Monaco here a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of Imola. I don't know. I would guess that they won't unless they think these new regs will
help?
Will help, yes, help the passing, help the racing at the track.
Specifically at tracks like this.
Yeah.
Imola.
And there's a lot of tracks that are difficult to pass on. But
well, I kind of feel like this circuit, it came around during the COVID years, and that was probably fine. We needed circuits within Europe that the teams didn't have to travel really outside of the EU. I just don't know if it's going to be kept longer term. Like, it might just get, be one of the sacrificial lambs for another circuit somewhere else. But
there were a couple good races in there, but it was dependent on rain, really.
Yeah.
With like I said, that it was a dry race, there wasn't a whole lot of action really on track.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of dull in that sense, whereas some of the other races that were exciting, it was rain.
Yeah.
And we didn't go one year because it flooded. Right?
The last year.
Yeah.
Flooded out.
So we'll see if it sticks around.
Right on. All right. So then the week after that, or was it the week after or 2
week
weeks?
After.
The week after, we went to Monaco.
Yes.
For the historical race.
Yes.
The parade session.
Yes.
That's procession. The parade procession.
Quick recap.
Please get to it.
Charles started on pole, I believe. Who was? I don't even know. I can't remember who started second. I didn't put the notes on here.
I think it was either Lando or Piastri.
Yeah, because then Piastri was second, and he got demoted because of blocking. I think, and he had like a 3-place grid drop.
Okay,
I believe is what it was.
I can't recall.
And then Norris, I think, ended up starting second. Anywho, Checo started toward the back of the field. He got into an altercation with Kevin Magnussen going up the hill.
That's right.
On the first lap. Big crash.
Huge crash.
Yeah, all the way up the hill. Came in kind of a lazy, I don't know. His front left wheel was inside Checo's rear right wheel going up the hill. So he was next to him. And then Checo kind of there was no room. Essentially, right. Checo was kind of in the middle of the track and then didn't really see him, I don't think. And then that was it. Big crash up the hill. Both Haas's went out too because Hulk was right behind that. Got tagged by Checo spinning around. Replay of Guan Yu Zhou going through at about 2 miles an hour trying to avoid the carbon fiber everywhere. The safety car went past him, or the medical car drove past him. And it was a mess. But the result of that was red flag. So you're in Monaco. You got to clean all that up, right? There's nowhere to go.
More importantly, Carlos Sainz had a puncture after the first corner, and he was basically going to be out.
Yeah, he was dropping hard through. He had already dropped
he dropped all the way to the back, 8. Minus these 4 cars because he went off at turn 4 or something at the top of the hill, right in front of the casino.
Yes,
he couldn't turn.
Right,
so he was stuck there. He was trying to reverse. He was reversing out, and then all of a sudden the red flag came out. But like you said, the outcome of Zhou
driving slowly through the first sector essentially, and he was the only person that did not make the timing line.
Yes,
when the red flag came out. That means they had to reset all the positions to the start of the race. What that also meant was everybody got a free change of tire.
In the pits because it was a red flag session.
Correct.
Okay.
So everybody that was on a medium tire switched to hard tires. Everybody that was on the hard tire switched to medium tire. That took the pit stop out of the race, which is the only thing that you can make strategy. Monaco a race, essentially, nowadays. And for the first time in Formula One history, apparently, the top 10 drivers did not move positions into their finishing positions. So
insane.
Yeah, 1 through 10 stayed exactly where they started. And I think the record before was 1 through 6.
Now, someone who was in 11th place did try to get into the top 10.
True.
They did try to make it stick. Unfortunately for them, in doing so, they wrecked their car. They put it about 6 feet in the air before they crashed down and broke the axle and punctured the tires. And
on his teammate's car.
Against his own teammate, yeah. And to the corner right before the tunnel I know they've got names for all these corners, and I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I know it for the weekend, and they all come back during the weekend, and then 3
And
days
then it
later,
disappears.
Nothing. The Nouvelle Chicane is the only thing I can recall. But that would be Ocon.
Yeah.
Ocon saw a gap. Admittedly, there was a little bit of a gap.
People
were going pretty slow because of various reasons. There's a lot of fuel on the cars, but
Your line of stern,
he screwed up hard.
Yeah, and this is presumably after they had talked about this exact situation because they were starting next to each other on track.
On track, 10th and 11th.
That make sure you don't want to make contact with your teammate. I mean, you never want to, right? But like especially Monaco, because you have somebody in the points. If something happens in front of you, you're going to capitalize on it immediately. So if you're there to capitalize, great. What happened was someone tried to capitalize on his teammate, which he didn't really make a mistake. He was just first lap, tried to make something stick, ran out of room. Ocon, like you said, was about 6 feet in the air. Wheel-to-wheel contact. Both cars had a little bit of damage. Ocon was out, I believe, immediately after that.
Yep.
Drove back to the pits. He was done.
After the red flag, they were not able to repair the car. So he just, But
Gasly
Pierre
was still
able
going.
he was able to get
I think
back
he
out.
got points out of the race. But, yeah, and that's kind of where this whole Ocon story of, now they're not going to re-sign him for various reasons. I'm sure this was coming already, but it was probably just the nail in the coffin. Be like, okay, we're just not.
Yeah, because it kind of sounded like they wanted to sit him out for a week come Canada.
Yeah.
But they ended up not doing that. He ended up racing in Canada. But, that's sort of the two incidents on the opening lap, these two crashes. Ocon was out, Hulk was out, Magnussen was out, and Checo was out. Sainz was able to recover, get back to the pits, restart in third place, and that's where he finished because, like you said, the top 10 finished as they were.
Right.
So
if you watched anything past lap 2, good on you.
I did.
So did I. It was, it's pretty boring.
I mean, out front, it wasn't like there were these weird gaps between first, second, third, and fourth because the McLarens and the Ferraris were racing against one another. They were taking their tires, they were taking care of their tires, and so was everyone else because everyone pitted on lap 1. Everyone changed their tires on lap 1 to get the mandatory pit stop out of the way. But everyone was nursing their tires. So there was sort of this everyone was playing chicken with one another about, are you going to stop twice? Are you really going to take these tires to the end? People who were racing like 30, 40, 50 laps on the mediums, like those tires were hurting at the end.
Yeah.
And so there was a little bit of like, will they, won't they? And it just ended up being that everyone didn't pit. So we didn't have any action except for people who had the gaps to do so.
Yeah, I think there was like 3 people that did it, and only one that mattered. I think Lewis
did it.
Lewis pitted because he had a gap, and he got a fast. Max pitted as well, I believe, because that's what triggered that.
Okay. That's right. He was down in like 6th place.
They were next to each other, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's gap, and then Lewis ended up with the fastest lap.
And Charles, who is from Monaco,
Yes.
won the race. Huge celebration for himself and everyone else in town.
Yep.
Because the prince and the princess hand out the trophies.
Yes.
So he got to meet his sovereign leader.
Well, even though he probably met
They've met probably a number of
a
times.
few times. But yeah, so that was cool to see at least.
It was.
Yeah, it was
I
very.
don't know if he's the first Monegasque to win.
Was it first or second?
First or second. I think it's the first that of our lifetime.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, cool. That was Monaco. No real news from there. Some teams brought some upgrades to the circuit, but the circuit's kind of like weird.
Nullifies basically any upgrade unless it's for like slow corners and you really want to test that out, I guess.
So
yeah, that was Monaco. Now we can get into Canadian Grand Prix.
Do we want to touch real quick on regulations? Because this was something that was announced between the two races.
We can touch on the major things because I don't remember all the details.
Okay.
Just a few things that I remember from when I looked at the article and the pictures that they sent out. Yeah.
Can you remind us when these are scheduled to change and what kind of regulation changes are we talking about?
So these new regulations will start for the 2026 season.
Okay. So about a year and a half out.
Yes.
Okay.
There's engine regulations that are changing.
Okay.
There's the car, I believe, is getting skinnier and shorter.
Okay. So
if I remember it correctly,
engine and physical aero regulation changes.
Yes.
Okay.
Like there's no wheel covers or the top arrow on the
That's right.
Wheels.
Shrouds, the wheel fairings.
It's not ground effect anymore either, is it?
There will still be ground effect, but it'll be minimized.
Yes, it won't be to the extent it is now, where it's basically pure ground effect almost.
Yeah, if I think I remember correctly, so the current power units are there's four main components to it. An internal combustion internal combustion engine, which is a 1.6 liter V6 that has turbos attached to it, 2 turbos, right?
Is it 2?
It's a twin turbo.
I think it was.
I can't remember. They're turbocharged.
Yeah, yes.
There's an MGUK, which is a kinetic energy recovery system, which charges the batteries during braking. Then they also have an MGUH, which is a heat recovery system. So it's taking hot air from the engine and storing it in a way that makes it so the engine loses less potential energy.
Right.
In 2026, we will keep the 1.6 liter turbos.
Yes.
And the MGUK. The MGUK will be increased in ability to store additional charge. Like the battery is going from like 100 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts or something. So it's it's a significant.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Or maybe that's the brake horsepower from it. I think maybe that's more likely.
It's still a lot.
It's a huge increase. But they are removing the MGUH from the engine. So the cars will be lighter, like you said, skinnier and narrower.
Yes.
So physically, we're getting different size cars, and we're getting a different engine set regulation. Although maybe they haven't really described exactly how big the engines are going to be.
Yeah.
So it might not be 1.6 liters, but it will be V6s, and it will be turbocharged, it sounds like.
Something else to note that casual people might notice is that the DRS is gone.
They are not calling it DRS anymore.
They're removing the DRS.
The wing will still open up.
Will it?
Yeah. So they're calling it active aero.
No, it's like a manual override.
It is still open.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
they just changed the name.
Yeah.
Oh, that's dumb.
So it'll have a rear wing that'll move, but it'll still be automatic, and a front wing that will open up.
Oh, because I knew they were doing active aero stuff. I didn't realize that's.
But the thing about the front wing is that, and the rear wing, since it's not going to be on a button, people are really concerned about safety with it. If it's automatic, it'll open up just as soon as you, reach a MPH, or the car realizes it doesn't need this downforce. How will it monitor it? And all of a sudden, just like turning into a corner, and you don't know like if your front wing is gonna
close. That's
the thing that keeps you
on the ground.
On the ground,
right? Well, but that's. I mean, you could say that with the DRS too, right? Because it's switch right, and they've been stuck open before too.
Stuck open before, and we had Marcus Ericsson had that really bad crash in Monza 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah, in the braking zone
into turn 1. Yeah. That was great. He like his rear wing was stuck open. As soon as he hit the brakes, the car spun out immediately. And he crashed huge.
Yeah,
that was pretty
scary. About that.
So we don't want that.
No
one wants that.
I'm sure some of it will change.
And I think the biggest thing was that F1 announced this. They had this big hoopla, announcements on social media, a YouTube thing.
Yep.
Huge announcements, showed it to the world. And then it kind of sounded like there were some rumors that the fact that not every team has signed off on these regulation changes in Canada. And so like they had this huge meeting with all the team principals and stuff. And some of the teams, I guess, haven't really sort of like said that they're going to fully do this. And maybe they're just kind of like holding that against F1 to sort of get the things that they want out of this.
Right.
But either way, once we know more about these rule changes, we'll make sure that we cover it in greater detail, because there's, I think, going to be some really interesting things about these regulations. We're huge proponents of smaller cars, lighter cars, definitely not at the expense of safety, but these cars are way too big. The current cars are way too big, way too heavy. They look awful in slow corners.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can get some more noise out of the engines and get some...
Maybe put some speakers on it. That way you get some ambient noise from forced.
They should just funnel that through the TV anyway.
But yeah, we'll cover that more detail once they kind of get more official.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried to make it official, but like you said, the teams weren't really.
Yeah.
Some of them weren't happy about it.
No,
and said
no,
they
but
hadn't signed off,
we definitely want to make sure that we know what we talk about. So we'll take the time to make sure that we cover it in better detail.
Yep. Get to the race?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go. Canada.
Right. Ooh, half hour in already. Let's get to Canada. Let's see.
So it rained all weekend.
Yeah, it also hailed on Thursday or Friday?
Friday.
Big hailstorm came through, rained every day at some point during the day. Race was also wet.
The race started wet.
Some might say it started full wet conditions.
Yes. The two Haas's will say that.
Yes, that's right. Let's see. George Russell qualified on pole for the race. Was it Max? Max had the same exact time.
Yes.
As George did.
But since George set the time first,
he was on pole. Yep. Correct. Yep. And Norris was P3, I think.
That sounds right.
Qualifying.
Piastri was 4th.
Yeah, and other things to note. Checo didn't get out of Q1. I think he was like P16 or 17. Both Ferraris didn't make Q3. They were 11, 12.
13 or something, 11th and 13th or something.
I think they were next to each other.
Okay.
And then Ricardo was at P5.
Right.
That was the kind of a surprise out of moving forward, I guess I would say.
Ocon had a grid penalty from his crash in Monaco. He had a 3-place grid penalty.
Dropped him to the back.
Yeah. And then one of the Saubers ended up, or both of the Saubers, one or both of them ended up starting from the pit lane during the race.
Yeah. But so how do we want to go about it? You want to talk about the safety cars? Do we want to get into?
Yeah, there were a couple incidents. We'll just cover, I think, let's cover the first few laps, what we remember that happened, and then we'll get to some of the safety cars, and then we'll talk about the end results.
Okay.
So, like you said, the race started
full wet.
Full wet. Well, it started very wet.
Yes.
Only the Haas's started the race on the full wet tires, the blue-rimmed wets.
Blue-walled.
Excuse me. Everyone else was on the green-walled intermediates.
Yes. The full wets are basically able to displace more water than the inters are.
So it's able to give the drivers and the cars more grip and contact. Well, not necessarily more contact, but probably more.
Yeah, more contact because they're displacing more water.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and they were screaming up the field. The race started. Everyone was sort of behaving through the first corner. Checo and Gasly ended up having a little bit of a scuffle in turn 2. Looks like there was some damage to Checo's wing. Gasly was sideways for a while. They were kind of down at the back, but the top 5 or 6 sort of remained where they were.
Yeah, kind of in line.
Yep. No one really crashed around there. Everyone was sort of tiptoeing around the first few corners because it was quite wet. George was in first, Max was in second, and then the 2 McLarens. But after the first 3 or 4 laps, man, the Haas's were screaming.
Yeah, K-Mag was up 10 positions, 10 positions in the first 3 laps, 4 laps. Yeah, P5, P4. Yeah, it was nuts.
It was nuts. And Hulkenberg had come up from P16 or something all the way to
7 or 8.
8th. Yeah, it was wild. And then the rain started to slow down and stop.
Yeah.
And then because they're Formula 1 cars and they're driving 100 miles an hour on the circuit, all that water is getting hoovered up, getting sucked up off the circuit and then displaced
to the side,
elsewhere in the air.
Yes.
And the wets need water.
Yes.
And the inters need water, but the full wet tires
really need
a lot of water
to keep them cool.
And that's how they're effective. So the Haas's started tapering off. Their lap times dropped down, but it wasn't quite a dry circuit yet. There were parts of the track that were dry. There was also the fact that there was looming weather incoming again.
Yes. Well, the drainage at that track is poor.
Because it's a street circuit.
Yes. Yeah. The manufactured street circuit.
Yes.
To be fair. But yeah, this corners of 1 and 2, 3, 4, it's down, quote unquote, a little bit more downhill.
Yep.
So those sections are always more wet than the rest of the track.
And they were pretty wet for the whole race.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, the Haas's had to pit off their wet tires, which they weren't far enough. They hadn't gained enough of an advantage on everybody, which it's hard to believe considering they moved, you hear, oh yeah, they moved up 10 places. Yeah, but that was 10 seconds up the road at that point. where now you lose like 22, 25 seconds in
Right.
Montreal, maybe more.
On
So-
new tires that are cold.
Yes.
They're not warm. The pit exit is super wet.
Yes.
Because no one's driven through it. So like it's one thing when you're on, between corners 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, where 20 cars have gone and done 20 laps.
And there's a dry line.
There's a half dry line. Now you're going on a full wet line with the intermediate tires, and you just can't get the power down.
Right.
So the Haas's ended up losing a lot of positions. It seemed like a great strategy at the time.
It's fun to watch.
It's very fun to watch, especially those cars. But then more weather came. People were kind of speculating about maybe changing to some dry tires because a lot of the track was dry, but all the teams were like, no, more rain's coming. We're not changing. Let's just wait. And then all of a sudden, lap 26, is it? Lap 25, Logan Sargent crashed into turn 4.
That was a second spin because he had went straight on, I think at like turn 6
Okay.
or something after that. Right after turn 4 or 5, and then going into 6, 7, he went straight on, slid right through.
Oh, that's right.
Barely touched the ball, was able to back
Kissed
out of
it,
that.
yep.
And he actually, I think he started like P12 or 13.
Okay.
13, I think. So he was in a good spot, but yeah, it was the second crash of the day. Spun out, couldn't get going again. Safety car came out, but at this point, we kind of have to rewind a little bit. Lando Norris had a heck of a stint on those inters as the track was drawing. I don't know if he had better tire management or what it was, or he was more comfortable, or the McLaren was just better in those specific conditions. But he went past both Max and Russell.
That's right.
Were battling, and everyone was kind of making mistakes. It was just who's making it worse.
Right.
But
Russell ended up going wide on a corner too.
Yep. But yeah, Norris flew, once he got by, I think he had like an 11-second lead at some point.
Did he really?
I think it was 11.
Wow.
And that's when the safety car came out. Problem is,
For Sargent's crash.
Yes, for Sargent's crash.
Okay.
And if we go kind of back to Miami where he won his race, he benefited from getting past the safety car and being able to go ahead and then basically getting a free pit stop while everybody else was stuck behind the safety car and he was in the lead. This was kind of the opposite.
Why? Well, what matters about driving behind the safety car? Is that you just drive slower?
Yeah, you have to stay behind the safety car, whereas if you're not behind the safety car, you stick to a delta.
Okay.
So this delta is a time, you can only go so fast around the racetrack essentially during a safety car condition or virtual safety car.
Okay. So the physical safety car being out there
Forces you to be behind it.
and drive at their speed versus your normal speed or your delta speed.
Correct.
Okay.
What happened here was the timing of the safety car. Lando was coming up to the pit or coming to the pit lane entry. And so he had to decide, am I going to go another lap or am I going to pit and get a fresh set of inters, I believe, at the time, because it was going to rain some more, they were talking about. Didn't go into the pits. I don't know if there was enough time or just they told him to stay out and go my next lap or whatever it was. Timing was tight. Goes around again, gets caught by the safety car. So now he's behind the safety car.
Oh, driving at their speed.
Yes, and right now he's 11 seconds ahead of Max. Max gets a free pit stop. Everybody behind Lando essentially gets a free pit stop because they haven't gone to the pit lane yet.
Right.
Haven't gone past it, whereas Lando has. So now Lando he can't fly past the pace car or safety car. He's got to sit behind it.
Yep.
While everybody else gets free tires or a free pit stop and catches up to him before he even gets to pit.
Right. And it isn't really a free pit stop per se. They're still driving slower in the pits.
Correct.
They're still held to the same safety standards. It's just that the time you lose while in the pits is nullified to an extent
Because of the safety car.
People out on track are driving at half the speed that they normally would. So if you lost, say, 20 seconds in a pit stop in Montreal, you maybe only are losing 10 or 8 seconds in the pits
During a safety car.
under a safety car condition.
Right.
Which Max did, Russell did,
I think just about everybody
everybody
did.
but Norris did. So by the time he came around and did his one lap, which normally takes 75 seconds in Montreal,
Yeah, racing conditions.
it took him like a full minute, a whole minute, 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And he pitted and came out.
I think he was like P5.
Ooh,
And that's was he behind Piastri too?
I think he
Or
was.
no, I think he was right in front of Piastri, his teammate. Oh, he came
That's
out
right.
Yep.
They came out right
It's
next
like
to
side
one
by
another.
side.
Yep.
Yep. So you go from leading the race by quite the margin to all of a sudden you're
Behind by 10 seconds.
right and you're stuck.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. It is, it's luck, right? Some of the stuff's luck. He got lucky in Miami. Not to say he maybe
Didn't
couldn't
earn
have won
it,
it,
right,
but you got to have some luck in some of these races. So unfortunate for him.
Now, that wasn't the only crash of the day. We had some others. So after that whole pit stop fiasco, it basically was good until, was it Yuki who crashed next? We didn't make a note here about what time Yuki crashed.
No, it was Sainz crash. It was Carlos Sainz crash.
Perez crashed first.
That was late, wasn't it?
That was lap 52. Sainz crashed the lap after. He crashed 53.
Yeah.
Checo crashed but didn't draw a safety car.
Right, correct. But the Sainz Albon did.
Oh.
That's what triggered the safety
But Yuki
car.
was stuck out in the middle of the circuit. There was
No,
definitely...
he kept going.
Did he keep going?
Yes, because he didn't get hit. He kept going.
Okay.
He just hit the bollard. They have to go around through the grass.
And then he spun.
Yep. Yeah, he spun and then Hulk almost hit
Okay.
him. Sorry, yes. Checo crashed,
Good.
broke his rear wing, crawled back to the pits.
He broke a lot of his car.
Yes. So he'd go back DNF, essentially. Sainz also spins, does a little pirouette. He collects Albon in the fiasco. That triggers a safety car because Albon's car is broken.
Very broken.
Yes. Then that triggers a safety car. Everybody pits for dries. Or gets new, or no, not everybody pitted. But some took advantage, some didn't. After the restart, Yuki spins later on. That's what happened. Yuki spun later on through the grass. I think because he was running in the points at that position, and then Hulk comes through behind him, like 2 cars behind, and almost just crushes him.
Right.
But last second's able to avoid it. I don't know how he had the grip going offline.
That was pretty scary.
Yeah.
That was, I think, when the circuit was still a bit more wet.
Yeah, it was the offline was still pretty damp.
Okay.
But yeah, dramatic spin for Yuki. Hulk misses him. Yuki ends up dropping out of the points. But we can go back to the top of the field here.
Yeah.
Kind of after all that fiasco, Max, he took the lead off the first safety car. He kind of led the rest of the way after that. He didn't really drive away, but he was far enough where he was comfortable.
He made a little bit of a gap for himself.
Yeah, but so if he made a little mistake, he would have been fine anyways. Max ends up winning the race after all that. Perez with the DNF, as we talked about, and he had struggled all weekend. Norris ends up P2, and I believe his teammate was holding up both Mercedes cars because they both pitted under the second safety car.
Okay.
Whereas the McLarens did not. So Piastri got passed by both Mercedes at that point. Russell started on pole. He ended up P3. He made a mistake, I believe, after the second safety car. Got passed by both Piastri and Hamilton because he was trying to pass Piastri. They made a little bit of contact going into the Wall of Champions.
That's right.
Nobody ended up hitting it, but Hamilton got by. But then George ended up getting past Hamilton again. Russell was on mediums. Hamilton was on hard tires.
Yep.
So the Mercedes, Russell ended up P3, got on the podium, and Hamilton was P4.
And then Piastri P5.
Piastri P5. Aston Martins had they had a really good day for them this year, but very quiet, it felt like. You didn't really see them on screen a whole lot.
No.
It was a quiet P6 and P7. Really good result for them this year.
Absolutely, yeah. They weren't passing people, but they also weren't getting past it.
Yeah, they both had pretty clean races
Yep.
and compared to everybody else,
Right.
which is what they needed.
They got a lot of points out of the weekend.
Ricardo capitalized, got P8,
Yeah. Started P4.
P5.
Started P5.
Yep.
Had some difficulty in the first lap, dropped a little bit, and then ended up finishing P8 after all the safety cars and pit stops. Good weekend for him. He got points. Yuki didn't.
Yuki was ahead of him up until his spin,
Right.
but it all counts, right?
It does count. Yep. So Yuki ended up P14 after the spin. He basically was last if it wasn't for
All the DNFs.
Yeah, all the DNFs and Joe's really, really slow pit stop. Joe was in the pits for like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad. So Joe ended up actually finishing down a lap, but Yuki was P14.
Yeah. So it was a good weekend up until that point. Alpine actually had a good weekend by their standards.
A double points finish for them.
But they decided to give themselves more controversy within the team.
Oh, no.
Gasly was P9 on road. Ocon was P10 on road. They claimed...
The other way around?
What did I say? Gasly was P9, Ocon was P10.
Yeah. I thought they let Gasly through, and then they didn't let Ocon back.
Right. Yeah. Gasly was P9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes. They finished that way.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I'm saying. And then what happened before that, I guess is where I was getting at. Ricardo had gotten by both Alpines, and Alpine claimed that Ocon had a battery recovery issue or deployment issue or something. Yeah, that's what they were saying on the radio. And then Ocon at first refused to let Gasly by, as Ricardo's building this gap now. And then he eventually lets him go. Naturally, he already got passed by, the V-carb of Ricardo. He's not going to get by him again. And then Hulk caught up to both Alpines, and Ocon was asking, is he going to switch back? And they said, nope, because Hulk was too close. Which, to be fair, I think he finished within a second of them. So coming down that back straight, maybe Hulk would have gotten by both of them if Gasly let Ocon go through.
Right, because there was someone who did perform a double pass over the weekend.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That was fun. But yeah, so Ocon not happy about that, but I don't think Alpine really cares at this point about what Ocon thinks about a whole lot of things.
No, he was very vocal on the radio afterwards, sort of being sort of like fake smug happy. He was being a little childish, but I mean, I would feel hard done too if I let my teammate through thinking that they were going to let me back through.
Right. But I think this also happened in Japan, the other way around.
It did.
So, yeah.
Well, the pattern we're noticing here is that clearly these two don't like each other. They don't want to give positions to each other, but this team has not managed the situation well at all.
Right. And they're the ones that hired both of them. Well, knowing the situation.
The people who hired both of them are gone because they got fired last year.
True.
They didn't change drivers during this season last year or during the off season or this year. It's a mess.
It is.
It's a huge mess.
But nonetheless, double points finish for Alpine. So how mad can they really be?
They can still be pretty mad.
Yeah. Well, doesn't matter. Haas. Hulk ended up P11, K-Mag P12. Kind of like we mentioned, they both started on the wets.
Sure.
And then both had to pit early, kind of went back down the grid. That's kind of how their day was. After that, Williams, a double DNF for them. But Albon had this sweet double pass going into the last chicane. And I think it was Ricardo he got by on the outside in the braking zone. And then Ocon was taking his time going into the chicane. And Albon just let off the brake a little bit, swooped on the inside, and that was a sweet move.
Right. It could have been a bad crash if anyone had sort of not been paying the most attention.
Right.
So good on all three of these drivers to keep everyone safe, keep the cars intact.
No contact.
Very little contact if there was any.
Right.
Albon made up 2 spots because people were driving slow and they were driving in weird spots. But that was also key here is that corner was offline was still pretty damp.
Yes.
People were kind of passing around there, but like people were making it work. And it was all just very, very dicey, very nip and tuck. And
yeah, it was very daring to make that move, especially.
So to do it on 2 cars, like, whoo, yikers.
It was a sweet move by Albon. That might be the move of your pass of the year or whatever.
Pass of the season might be for sure.
Yeah.
That's so far.
That's a big candidate. That's definitely number 1 right now.
Okay.
Sargent, like we said, DNF crashed twice. Second one got him.
First one,
second one got him. The first one, it's kind of...
Poor guy. He's just not. Yeah. He's not.
His confidence on the floor right now. He had good qualifying too. And just...
He almost outqualified Albon.
Yeah.
They were really close. They were like a couple of hundredths away. Not tenths, hundredths.
Yeah. Sauber, their car is just slow. I don't know if they just aren't doing anything. Or
I don't think Sauber wants to spend money when they're going to sell the team to Audi, and Audi doesn't want to spend the money because their name's not on it. So
right.
the car kind of stinks.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's
and
bad.
this is where they've been. I mean, P13 looks good, but when you have 6 DNFs or 5 DNFs,
yeah, it's not so good, is it?
And your teammate's P15, that's
Yeah.
not much better. And he was last on the road.
Joe was also finished a lap down.
Yes.
And then lastly,
We haven't really talked about Ferrari a whole lot other than Sainz's crash.
they had a bad weekend.
Yeah. We talked about their qualifying. They started at P11, P12. Leclerc had a battery deployment issue or something in his first stint and couldn't pass anybody. I don't know if he was necessarily getting passed, but he couldn't do anything. He was just stuck. Pitted for slicks at a weird time, like right
2
when
laps before the rain started.
yeah, before the rain was getting everyone. There was even I think on the broadcast, like, oh, they're predicting 20 minutes to rain. Oh, they're predicting 10 minutes to rain. And I'm like, if you're gonna go on slicks, you should have done it
20 minutes ago. Yeah,
right. And then it's like, oh, 5 minutes till rain. Leclerc comes in the pits. Like, what?
Yeah,
and he puts on hard tires.
He hard restarts his car and puts on hards.
Yes, the hard restart did fix his engine issue or his recovery or whatever the issue was, deployment. But yeah, puts on hard tires on a wet track. That's never gonna work.
And then they just yeah.
And then he had to come back in and pit for inters. So he's a minute behind
Right.
Joe at the time or Bottas or whoever it was.
So they retired the car,
Yeah.
which is silly.
Ended up retiring the car with 20 laps to go, something like that. And yeah, tough weekend for Ferrari. Sainz DNF'd after his spin crash. So yeah, rough weekend after a really good weekend at Monaco.
That's the Ferrari formula.
That's right. That's right.
You have hopes and then you crash twice.
Yeah. It was a fun early stint of the race, at least. There's a lot of movement. A lot of drivers are making mistakes in the tricky conditions, the ever-changing conditions.
The opening 10, 12 laps were fantastic. The safety car, the pit stops. There was a lot of various strategy things. A lot of the teams made the right calls, which ended up sort of making the last half of the race sort of less interesting because everyone sort of played it safe. Would have been nice to see someone go on slicks during that intermediate period when the track was drying and there was a dry line, but then we kind of knew that the rain was coming. Someone could have perhaps tried to put on some softs at that time and go pedal to the metal, but
right, for 10 laps.
For 10 laps. Didn't work out. No one did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had a sort of another max win for the weekend.
But albeit it was competitive. I mean, at least the top 3 was kind of equal at the beginning, and it looked like.
And they did trade positions.
They were.
It was 3 different race leaders.
Right, 3 different cars, 3 different teams.
Yep.
Mainly, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, also 3 different
Which is
teams on
nice.
the podium.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yep. And one of them wasn't Ferrari, which was weird at this season.
Yeah, Mercedes. They have a new new front wing, which we didn't really cover, but this seems to have improved their car quite some bit.
Yeah, we'll see Barcelona. Well, that'll be the big test.
That'll be a big test. Speaking of Barcelona, that's in about 10 days?
10 days.
Yep.
Yeah, the 2nd or 23rd.
Yep. Okay. So that will be the next race, Barcelona.
Yep. Let's go over some driver standings here.
Yes.
Max extended his lead, obviously, by winning the race. He's at 169 points. Charles behind him at 138. Lando moves up to 3rd, about 113 after. I mean, he's had a great last 5 race run. He's been in the top 4. Carlos Sainz stays put, or I guess it drops down a little bit to 4. Sergio right behind him. Piastri, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso, Yuki.
Wow, Yuki's got 19 points.
Yeah, he's had a good season, so I didn't get any this weekend.
Rock on.
Yeah, it's been a good season for him so far.
All right, Lance is on 11. Ollie Bierman still up there at 6, tied with Nico Hulkenberg, who's got 6 points. Daniel Ricciardo on 5. Albon on 2. Ocon on 1. Kevin Magnussen on 1. Pierre Gasly on 1. How would Pierre Gasly have 1 when he finished 9th?
That can't be right.
That can't be right.
Glitch in the system.
Well, yeah, interesting. So we'll have to look at that. But the people who are still on 0 points are Zhou Guan Yu, Valtteri Bottas,
Logan.
and Logan Sargent.
21st out of 20 drivers or 20 cars.
Yeah. All because Bierman came in and scored points on his one race.
Yep.
Very interesting. All right. So Barcelona, this used to be the main testing circuit. We're looking forward to it. It's got long straight, fast speed corners, medium speed corners,
slow speed corners.
Does it have any slow speed corners anymore? No. I got rid of it.
Really? Yeah,
we got rid of
one.
chicane.
There's one left-hander that's after this, the back straight. Toward the end of the lap.
Yeah.
One sharp left.
Yeah, so it's got one slow speed corner now.
Yeah.
Well,
but
that'll be fun. Home race for Sainz and Alonso. So we'll see a lot of green and a lot of red in the stands.
Yep. A lot of yellow and red as well.
A lot of yellow and red as well. Yep.
So should be fun. But yeah, this has been another episode of the Pit Lane, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time, Jordan.